Hereby call the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors meeting to order. We welcome everyone that's in attendance, all the wonderful smiling faces. And if you don't have a smiling face, try and get one. Upon saying that, we're going to have our Pledge of Allegiance. Immediately following the Pledge of Allegiance, we have our invocation by Reverend Douglas. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. Eternal and all-wise God, we thank you for all your many benefits and blessings which you've so bountifully bestowed upon us. We thank you, God, for the blessings upon this county. We pray that you might bless this board and the citizens as we carry forth your business. We want to honor you, give you praise, give you glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, next is setting of the agenda. Anybody have an item they'd like to add? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as is?
Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as is.
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Next is our public citizen comment period. This time is provided by the board to allow citizens the opportunity to address the board on issues of importance to the citizen. No individual shall be permitted to address the board for more than 3 minutes. And if you will focus your eyes upon the screen, I think HVAC is going to put up a time. That way everybody knows where to stand in regards to this. And for the public hearing, the public comment period, we have
Solar.
Libby Ashby. Just state your name and address for the record, ma'am.
Yes, sir. My name is Libby Ashby, and my work address is 153A Morton Lane in Appomattox.
My neighbor? Oh.
I'm the new victim witness advocate for Appomattox County, and so I wanted to come and introduce myself to you all. Thank you for this opportunity that you've given me, and in your board books, you should have a copy of the handout for the domestic violence candlelight vigil, which is October 27th here at in Cortland Park. It would be incredibly meaningful if you all would make time to come out to this vigil. Statistically speaking, in rural communities, 1 in 7 women will experience domestic violence at some point in their lives. And the homicides that we have in Appomattox County are intimate partner. They're not home invasions, they're not strangers. So it's a big reoccurring issue. And I think if the citizens could see their leaders out supporting awareness for this cause, that would mean a lot. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the board who failed to sign up?
Stretch me to the point.
If not, we'll move right on. Next is appearances. These scheduled times are provided by the board to allow citizens and organizations outside the county government to discuss matters of importance to the board. And we are privileged to have our sheriff with us, Sheriff Donald Simpson. And Major is behind him, Major Richardson.
Good evening. I'll try to smile. I won't tell any jokes. I will try to smile. This is good news, but with gifts, there's always strings attached. And just to kind of give you an update, we applied for and received one of the state SRO, school resource officer position grants. It's some details of that. We were awarded $46,068, which is 75% of the school year for that position. The grant year will run from 10/1/22 to 6/30/23. And there's some caveats that are involved with this position. The state is very clear, and you can't supplant local funds with their grant position. So that being said, this school year, I've had a dedicated officer at every school, plus I'm using part-time officers to augment the 4 that full-time. So in essence, I have 4 full-time plus a part-time officer patrolling the schools. This would be an additional person on top of that. My question to you is, collectively, do we want to pursue this as a county? This will cost us. Would have to pay at least 3 months of salary for this individual. You're not guaranteed this grant after the 6/30/23 date. As long as we're in good standing, we can reapply, but that's only if funds are available. There's no guarantee for the continuation. So if I were to hire someone and put this in this, they're guaranteed a job only till 6/30/23. Then we would have to reapply. Now, through attrition, we would probably have an opening at some point between now and then to move someone into another position, but you are taking somewhat of a risk. The funds are not guaranteed, and they won't be guaranteed beyond this point. I can't use this to replace a locally funded position already set for a school. So this would be, to be clear, would be an additional full-time officer at the high school along with the one there, plus the part-time that I'm running between all schools. We're kind of maxed out on cars. I have really stretched the fleet. I hadn't asked for an additional car to cover new positions over the few years we've gotten some other positions. So the fleet is showing some age. It would impact that, so I would be coming before you probably next year saying I need another car. Because we're maxing out. We try to keep the cars, make them last longer, but this position would possibly need another vehicle. This doesn't include any sort of equipment, that type of thing. So there would be a significant cost associated with accepting this grant. Briefly, I would like to at least mention the fact that we are making progress on the lockup that I talked to you about in the work session. I went to Dinwiddie County last 2 weeks ago and talked to their staff. They do what we want to do. They're part of a regional jail, but they have a lockup where they can hold a prisoner up to 12 hours, which that's the DOC time limit. I had the director of local regional jails come down last Friday, and we met with her, and she toured our facility, and very positive feedback. I think we're some very minor changes in our facility, and we can get there. The issue with that will be staffing. So we're going to have to, have people to run that, and this position could help as far as another position to pull from if we were to have the additional SROs, the 3 months, this person is not working in school, they potentially work that, just, kind of everything's on the table. So I'm asking for your judgment and your wisdom to decide if this is best for the county. I think it's an opportunity to put another person at the high school. I do have a full-time person at the high school. I do supplement that with a part-time person. This would be an additional person at the high school. Ms. Adams and I can discuss it later, and look at the numbers and see exactly where we sit and how much it's going to cost. But we have to let them know, we have to accept this grant within 60 days that we're ineligible. So, we've got a few weeks. We don't have a lot of time, but, there isn't an additional cost to this grant is what I'll end with. Any questions?
I got one, Chair.
Mr. Hogan.
So if this grant is for a year, would we be looking for somebody already certified? Or if we have to hire an uncertified person and they're in the academy for 6 months, then we only get them for 6 months?
Their qualifications must be 21, have at least 2 years of certified experience, and then they would have to go to the SRO school. So, yeah, you'd have to hire certified with 2 years, which may be impossible.
I was going to ask
Quite
you, how
honestly.
likely do you think that's going to happen?
That could be an
Finding a
impossibility.
certified officer, how likely do you think that is?
You just don't know. I mean, there are people that want to work here. We've been able to fill all our positions, which is unique in the law enforcement world, but I don't know that I can fill this immediately.
Thank you.
Sheriff, I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
Just for FYI. Well, for me.
Right.
So when this lease runs
Just
out,
running in the background.
okay, then he or she could come on to your workforce.
Only through attrition, only if we had an opening
Okay.
from somebody else leaving.
I know. Oh, have you, by any chance, had an opportunity to speak to Dr. Bennett in regards to, okay,
We have, and they provided the funding for the part-time. I don't know what their appetite would be I can't speculate on what their appetite would be to take up a full-time, but they did provide the $20,000 that we're using to pay for the part-time this year. So that's a thought, and, have thought of it, but not in a formal setting have I discussed them taking this position.
anyone else have any questions for the sheriff? Well, thank you so much for coming and explaining this to us.
Is-
Be on it.
Reset
Is it
button.
your pleasure that we decide between Ms. Adams and I what to do with this position?
What's the board's position on this?
Okay. Yeah, I've got that at the bottom.
I don't have a problem with that.
I left my little clicker up there, but I didn't know who she was. So I haven't told
Okay,
her.
yes,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Maybe she'll figure it out. See it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, moving right along. Mrs. Tracy Blado, is that correct? Blado, Director, Workforce Development, Virginia Career Works.
Mr. Wagner's gonna start, just because he's gonna speak briefly.
Okay, thank you. And you are the Executive Director of the Workforce, correct?
No, sir, I'm the Executive Director of the Central Virginia Planning District Commission.
Okay.
And Tracy and I are co-located at 828 Main Street in Lynchburg. And I just wanted, as a new employee, new to the region, come up and take just a few moments to introduce myself. And I'll speak very briefly and give Tracy most of the time. But we just thought, for sake of order, that it might be good if I came up and said a few words first. So I appreciate your entertaining us. As I said, I'm Alec Brebner. I've just moved here. I was at the Crater Planning District Commission for a couple of years. I have about 20 years of experience working in planning and architecture, most of that with planning district commissions throughout the Southeast, about 7 of them now. And just by a refresher, a planning district commission is a coalition of 10 local governments in Central Virginia. And our responsibility is to convene, coordinate, and connect. We connect localities to resources from the state and the federal government. We seek to facilitate dialogue around subjects like economic development, transportation, public safety, water quality. So, for example, the way those things have manifested in Central Virginia is that as part of our economic development efforts, we house the Workforce Board. And we also have federal designation for transportation planning. We have that responsibility in our region. And we are involved in water quality. And in public safety, we house the Radio Communications Board, in which we coordinate with several localities in the region to help them with emergency communications across boundaries, to help with mutual aid response and the like. So we're doing a variety of things. We would certainly invite any of y'all to come down and visit with us. I'd be happy to go out and sit down with you one-on-one to talk about what we do at the Central Virginia PDC and how we can assist you in Appomattox County. Mr. Hips sits on the Planning District Commission himself, as does Ms. Adams. Ms. Adams typically assigns John Spencer to come and represent the county as well. So you all are well represented in our community, in our board. And certainly appreciate that. We appreciate that engagement. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me anytime I can be of help. I do have my card with me. I'd be happy to pass them out if you would like to take one. And I would enjoy meeting you and speaking with you further. So thank you very much for the time.
One thing,
Yes, sir.
PD 11. That's what we are.
Yes, sir.
Are we correct? Just remember, we're number one.
The number one. You get 2 number ones. That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Wait.
Thank you. I was really glad that Mr. Brebner was willing to come tonight because I think he's been doing a great job already and he's only been here for several months. And we're really happy. You know, the last time I was here, it was with Gary Christie. and he was getting ready to retire, and he had such a longevity in our region. So we're thrilled to have someone that has planning district experience that came. A little bit about me. I did come here when Mr. Christie was retiring, but I'll just refresh your memory that my background is in the private sector. I worked for Ericsson for 10 years, a telecommunications company. Before that, Georgia Pacific, and way back in the day, and when I was going to college, I worked for BWXT. They got me a clearance, and I worked in the PR department. Switched gears about 15 years ago into economic development, worked for Lee Cobb at first, and then Brian David with Region 2000 for a few years, and then 10 years with Bedford County, and now I've come full circle and come back up to the Bank of the James building to work on the 12th floor. So that's a little bit about my background. So I was on the workforce board for many years. We have 14 regions of workforce in our state. And so the central region, we're called the Virginia Career Works Central Region. And we are, is this the clicker? I think I can do this myself, maybe. Is that what this is?
Yes, ma'am.
I pushed up.
Do the other
Where do
one.
I'm pushing the arrow up. And do I?
Do the other arrow. It's
The under. It's the
reverse
opposite
of what you
direction.
think. Yep.
You guys have tricked me. So we are a system of partners. And so the whole thing, you might have heard of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. One of the things that our board does is administer this federal grant. But as part of that grant, they actually encourage us to work together, believe it or not. Can you imagine? We are mandated to work together. Now, I would like to think that in our region that we automatically collaborate, but when you have a mandate to do so, you better make sure you're doing it. And to make sure of that, we are actually co-located with all of these partners under one roof, and we have a central location on Oddfellows Road. The Virginia Employment Commission is in there, along with the Department of Aging and Rehab Services. We have all the different organizations that are part of that workforce system. So when someone comes into our center or gets a referral to us, there's no wrong door. If they come in through one of those organizations, they can reach the Title I program that I administer with our career navigators. And if they come in through us, but they're disabled or something else, or they're a veteran, we can work with one of those other partners and overlap some of our services, if that makes sense. We are directed under a workforce development board, and that board is directed under the chief local elected officials that Mr. Hinkle serves on. So just for our board's sake, and I want to show you all the people that are on our board. You can't see all the names, but you can see Nat Marshall is our chair, Sierra Phillips from Southern Air is our vice chair, and over 50% of our board has to be private sector. Our chief local elected officials, they bless our budget, they nominate board members, and they set policy for our board. So they meet a couple of times a year. Our board meets more than that. They meet 4 times a year, and they have a lot of committees that are focused on youth. And in one case, John Redding is on that committee from your chamber, and many other things like the operations and finance. So as I said, we are there to also, in addition to being the regional conveners, to make sure that there's a discussion taking place with all those partners about how people and businesses can receive the best workers and how workers can get the best training. In addition to that, we run this Title I Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And basically, there's 3 funnels of federal money that comes down and comes through the Planning District Commission. We use that shared resource with finance so we can save funds there. And we focus on adults that have barriers. That could be a language barrier. It could be a disability or some sort of poverty or some other type of thing that they might have a barrier to employment. Dislocated workers are people that get unemployed. We've had a couple businesses, you might have seen KDC1 is closing next year. And there was an announcement recently that Master Brands is a company in Lynchburg, and that they announced that they're closing. We put into action a team when that happens to make sure that these employees that are called dislocated workers, or they will be when they're laid off, that we can provide them with training if they need it so they can find another job. But more important to that than that, in this day and age, you know how there's job openings everywhere? Businesses want employees that know how to work, that know how to show up on time. And if they got laid off from a company like Master Brands or KDC1, other businesses in the Lynchburg region want them because they know that they've already been working. They have those skills. And then the last category is youth. And when we say youth, we're talking about ages 14 to 24, so it's a big range, where the adult ages are 18 and up, and you might say, well, there's an overlap there. But with the youth, we can do some services that are a little bit different than the adult, and we can catch them right when they graduate is what we try to do. So we work with the CTE programs, we work with the schools to get referrals from students that basically don't have that home life, that don't have that system, that they can, find a job when they graduate very easily. We can kind of walk alongside them, find out what their aptitude is, what they might be good at, what they do well in school, and that will give us a clue as to what they maybe could do when they graduate. Or if they're not going to graduate, we can help them graduate, get their GED if, in some cases, if that's what's needed. So those are the groups that we work with. And I already mentioned some of the things that we do, but we do both basic services to all people. So if you come into the Workforce Center, if you send one of your constituents that needs some help, you see that they have a barrier to employment, you can send them to us, you can send them to our website. They can watch our orientation video to understand what we can do, and then fill out a small form, and then they'll get a call back from a career navigator. Or they can just drive over to our center in Lynchburg, or set up at your library a meeting where we'll come to you. And we can offer basic services, resume help, things like that, and interview skills and things like that. But if they qualify for our programs, either they're low income or dislocated, they've lost their job, or one of those barriers that we talked about, we can provide more individual services. We can pay for training. We can pay for getting their car fixed if they need to get to work. Think some of those types of things if they're eligible. Do we serve Appomattox County? You bet we do. Do we want to serve more of Appomattox residents? Yes, we do. We want to serve more businesses. We have had several businesses that we've recently worked with in Appomattox County, and we're really happy about that. We love to offer upskilling of employees. We've had some work with Virginia Metal Fab. We had, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget, hold on, the name of the company. We had, maybe I didn't write it down. But anyway, there's several different Appomattox companies that we've been working with. Right now, though, when I talk about that we pay for training and we pay for some of those things, there's only been 6 active this year. This past year, we've only had 6 active that we've paid for training for in Appomattox. So there's an opportunity there to grow that number. If you know that there's more people than 6 that need our help with paying for education and things like that. We served 83 Appomattox residents at our Workforce Center. And those are people that actually came to our Workforce Center to receive some sort of basic services. So how does that compare with others that we've paid the training dollars for and things? We've served 121 with those payments, with training, with helping with even helping to pay for childcare in some cases so someone can get to work and things like that. And then there's been 95 active youth clients in our region total. And I don't have the breakdown to how many of those were actually from Appomattox County. But we do know that we are getting some referrals from schools and from school counselors. But I think that there's opportunity there to get more. So how many people came through our Workforce Center last year? 2,368 people paid a visit to our center. So that gives you an idea of what we're seeing. And 83 of those basically were from Appomattox County. So what do we need from you all? Well, you all are the ones that are respected in the community. You all are the ones that have residents that call you all hours of the day and night to find out how you can help them. When you have a person or a business that is saying that they need help and you believe that our services, and I've left some brochures, might be able to help them, just get in touch with us or have them get in touch with us. But if you are connected to, for say, a nonprofit organization or something, we can also offer training, these types of training courses for free to those residents. Jeff Bennett works in our Virginia Workforce Center, and he will come out here and give a career essentials class, for example, with, say, a handful of 4 or 5 people. Give them, teach them how to make a good resume, have them practice interviewing skills. But there's a whole Skills USA course, like a 6-week course, 1 day a week or so, that he can teach. And when they come out of that, they are job ready. They also know how to manage their budget at home and things like that. I mean, it's a whole program that really just helps people to get a better life. And again, I mentioned the on-the-job training and the things that we're doing for businesses. Some examples that I have there, Virginia Metal Fab is one that we've helped them with an accounting class in one way to give some skills. These are skills that help people keep a job, that help businesses stay afloat. Lastly's Auto Body, we were able to help them get certified in auto body training. Moore's Electric, we were able to get a bunch of their employees, like 15 of them with certifications in a certain area, and pay for that. There's a list, and you don't have to read it all, but it gives you an idea of about how many businesses we do work with. And this could be the on-the-job training that I talked about, or it could be that we're doing job postings. If you follow us on social media, which is Virginia Career Works Central Region, we have a following of like almost between 2,000 and 3,000 people that are watching those job postings from our local companies. And you all can share those job postings. I just want to remind you that our key to the future is our youth. So we are also looking for those at-risk youth, the youth that don't have that good, strong family support system in some cases, or are low income and have some certain barriers. We're even, if there's a foster child, they're an automatic entry to our program. We want to find those youth because we don't want them to disappear when they graduate. We want to be able to guide them into the right future so that they can get that good job. And then with my economic development background, I want to share just 3 slides to give us a good idea because it's all connected, right? Workforce is connected to economic development. And what I want to show with this slide is this is kind of, you see that we have 14% in manufacturing. Why is that important? Why do we want 14% when the state only has about 10%? Why do we want 14? Anybody? Why is it good to have manufacturing? John, what do you think? More jobs, but also more money. Manufacturing people make more money than retail people, don't they? Retail, there's still a need for retail too, but when it comes to a future career and to make a living for yourself, manufacturing will give you that average job between 40 to 50,000 when you've been in that job for a couple of years. Professional and technical services is another one. In Appomattox County, construction is big, and construction pays well too, and that's a great career. But it's important that we attract more manufacturing because overall, you'll hear stories about that manufacturing is decreasing U.S.-wide. But it might be decreasing, but there's a real push to bring back manufacturing, and we are seeing that. So what about wages? How have we fared in our region? Our average wages have gone up 5% since COVID. They're now on average in the entire, we're part of the Lynchburg region, all of us, $46,335 for a worker year over year. They're up to $46,000 at this point. And in Appomattox, just like in certain areas of Bedford County and Amherst County in the rural areas, the average wages might be a little bit lower, but remember, that's all connected to the cost of living. If the cost of living in those rural areas is lower, then you can get more purchasing power, more bang for the buck, even if you do make less than some of the bigger cities. And so when you look at the average, if for $1 of what it'll buy you at the grocery store, in Lynchburg, it'll only cost you 88 cents, if that gives you an idea in the Lynchburg region. So I hope that that's kind of giving you a good overview of us. Again, the businesses that need to upskill, even if they're just upskilling 1 or 2 employees, we could be able to reimburse for some of that training and guide them. For residents, if they lost a job, think of us, of how we can help them, even if it's just connecting them and getting them ready for that interview. Remember that we can help with that. But those that have the barriers, they fit that Title I federal program and what it was designed for, to help them get a better life, and we can help as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? Any questions?
I'd like to thank you and Mr. Hinkle on his presentation.
Yeah, Mr. Hinkle's been really good about asking the right questions. And also, he cares about, are we serving the right percentage of Appomattox residents? And when I look at that, I think there's room for improvement again. So I'm looking for help with you all and with the schools to get more connected.
Mr. Hinkle, Mr. Hogan.
You mentioned upskilling. Is that more just for the business that's trying to get a person that extra certification? Or that's not for a person that's already got a job?
No, it is.
Looking to get a better job.
Well, it's for both. So it kind of depends on the city. So we have on-the-job training for people, and they can be employed. But when we're talking about the business grants, that is to upskill to help an employee keep a job. Let's say they get a new piece of machinery, and that employee needs to learn how to use that machinery, or their job could be at risk if they don't get upskilled. Then that's where we can help. And we work closely with the community college. But also it could be that the employer's responsible for who they get to do the training. We're not going to tell them who they're going to use. They can hire their own training or even send their employee to a training program, and we might be able to reimburse them.
If I work for company A and I think, you know what, I could make more money working for company B, but I need some extra skills, is that something that you guys could help with, or is that get more of in a murky area?
Yeah, well, when it comes to the businesses, we're not trying to get them to compete with other businesses to keep their employees. We're focused on that one business. But when we're dealing with a person, we can be more fair. And, if they're working, let's say, in a retail job or one of the lower paying types of jobs, and they want to get a skill to do something, let's say to be a welder or to learn how to do HVAC systems for heating and air, anything like that can provide more wages, we can help in that situation if they're a low-paid employee, if that makes sense. All right.
Any other question?
Any others?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now engage in our 3 public hearings. First public hearing is RZZ 20634 Douglas Faulkner Jr.
So this will be, this is the second.
A duly advertised public hearing has been scheduled to receive comments on a rezoning petition filed with Mr. Douglas J. Faulkner Jr. Mr. Faulkner has petitioned to seek rezoning on property located at 253 Huntley Springs Road in the Appomattox area in order to use the property for agriculture uses, which here is defined as keeping or raising of livestock. The parcel totals 1.05 acres in size. The tax map identification number is 87A46. Requires rezoning from R1 low density residential zoning district to A1 agricultural zoning district for this land use to be permissible. The property is part of the rural conservation area as designated by the Appomattox County Comprehensive Plan. At its September meeting, the Planning Commission held a public hearing to receive comments. Mr. Faulkner spoke in favor of his petition and presented a petition of support signed by 7 neighbors. Multiple citizens spoke in opposition, with 1 citizen presenting a petition in opposition signed by 16 neighbors. After receiving comments, the Planning Commission determined for public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice, they would recommend denial of the petition because the petitioner failed to show that the result of the rezoning would not change the character of the immediate neighborhood, would not create a health, safety, and welfare issue concerning well water contamination, and failed to show how the A1 district land uses would not create conflict with the existing adjacent land uses. The Planning Commission vote was unanimous. Is anyone here to speak in favor?
This is Mr. Faulkner, he's a petitioner, he's out there.
Oh, okay. Come on up, sir. State your name and address for the record.
Good evening, my name is Douglas John Faulkner Jr. I'm over on 253 Hunley Springs Road in Appomattox. So, can I continue? Okay, sorry, I'm not sure how that works. The couple things kind of presented from last time about failing to show that wouldn't affect other neighbors. The area in which I keep the goats in the back towards the back of the property is not near any wells. The wells that are in usage are in the front of the properties of my neighbor and myself. The neighbors to the rear of me, who are also agriculturally zoned, their property is where they actually have their houses, their wells, everything is far away from me. Now, I will also say that majority of my neighbors, including many people who are also zoned as residential, do keep animals, pigs. I've even been told some of them kept cows at one point. Now, there is misunderstanding about the land. When I first moved in, I was having a hard time finding any real information about how it was zoned. So I went off what the realtor told me. Realtor said it was zoned as agricultural. All my neighbors around me said it was zoned agricultural as well. As far as petition is concerned, the only people I spoke with are people who are immediately around me, who signed the petition, who would be immediately affected by me. Also, several of them have said that they don't want any conflict. So if you look at the petitions, many of them signed both petitions because they don't want conflict in the community. Now, I feel that me putting animals on the property, since we're talking about a 1 acre lot, I should also mention that there was some concerns brought up about the amount of animals I can keep. From what I understand, and this is from my limited understanding, it's hard to find the information, that a lot of large animals, such as cows and horses, must be kept if you only have property of at least 2 acres zoned as agricultural. Now, I may be misunderstanding the rules, but that's what I understood of them. So, and the animals I was keeping on that property are much smaller than that. We're talking about a dwarf animal, a Nigerian dwarf. So my understanding is that the animals I had on that property was sufficient. I've had up to 12 on that property. I have since greatly reduced the amount of animals I had because of the concerns of the neighbors. Right now, I have, because I wasn't sure how this today was going to go, I have relocated all the animals to ensure that I was meeting up the standards in the middle of this transitionary period. As far as affecting other properties, my animals generally stay in my area. Unfortunately, as we've seen this year, there is windstorms that do come through. They have gone out before. They are an electric fence that is live all the time. I don't see at this point how this would affect any neighbor since it's not going to affect anyone's safety. Now, last year, several years ago now, I guess, there was an attempt to put in a cemetery next door to me. At that hearing, I did speak in opposition to it, and I did mention that the area in which they were going to bury people would have been close to the wells in those properties. On my area, where I'm actually keeping animals, is far away from the wells, so it presents no public health safety issue. So at this point, that's pretty much all I have to say. At the end of the day, I just want to make sure God's glorified in the situation. I'm very active in the community. I just want to make sure whatever happens today, that hope God's glorified in it, whether it's going to be in my favor or against my favor. So thank you for your time today. Have a great night.
Thank you. Anyone else speak in favor? Anyone speak against? Okay. Somebody come on up. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Brenda Cashwell. I live right beside Douglas. And I have pictures showing that the goats had gotten out and the dates and everything. I'm not one of those people that is computer literate and all that, but my granddaughter has the pictures, and she can bring you up the my Kindle, and you all can look through the pictures to see the dates and everything when they were out. Okay, first of all, what Douglas said was that he got signatures from our neighbors, and our neighbors agreed with it. Douglas, I have his portion of his petition. His petition was taken and gotten around from my neighbors on 7/7. And so I also, on 7/20, went around to my neighbors, and I took the petition that I got from Mr. Rourke that I had made against Mr. Faulkner. And I have the copy of the petition here. My petition states that with rezoning, my problem is that the animals keep getting out and they're getting on my property. The second thing is that not only are they getting out, but the odor. He has 12 goats in a space that my neighbor, he's sick now. He couldn't come to the meeting. He gave me the measurements. All right. He said that the parcel is 87A46 on 1.05 acres. All right. And that 1.05 acres equal to 45,738 square feet. All right, minus the frontage and the house, which was 161,092. All right, so that equals to 29,546 feet, the total in back square feet. And so what Mr. Faulkner has with the goats is 0.678 acres, which is not an acre of land. Okay, the other thing is that Mr. Faulkner had the goats mostly on my side. And on my side, I can't open my windows. I can't open my doors. They have to stay shut all the time. I have clotheslines. I can't use my clotheslines. Inside of my house, the odor's inside of my house. I have three air purifiers, plus I have the wall sockets where you get from the store to put out fragrances and stuff like that. I have them in the walls, plus in my closets, I have the little small spaces. Because when I go out somewhere, I don't want to smell like I'm working on a farm. My cars, I have 3 different cars. My cars smell the same way. I can't open a window. I can't open a door. I've discussed with Mr. Faulkner before. I asked him, I said, I've even carried things over there to his animals. And I told him, I said, the odor is terrible. Can you do something about the odor? All right. He didn't say nothing that day. So one day I was out there weed eating, and I asked him again. I said, Doug, can you do something about the odor? In fact, I have what you call the pellets, a lime, plus I had a powder lime. I was going to tell him I was going to give him some. I have it in my shed. He starts, I'm going to call the police on you. I'm going to call the police just because I asked him to do something about the odor. I'm going to call the police on you. I'm going to call the police. So he didn't call the police. I just went back into my home. So when I went back into my home, like I said, I could see all of his area because it's right at the backyard of my house. So while I was standing there washing dishes, there was a goat in the backyard. So here it is. I see him. He has one goat coming from the side of my house with one arm and one on the other arm. And then when I raised the window and told him, I said, see, I told you, the goats get out. But when I tell him that, they're not out.
Thank you, Ms. Cashwell. Anyone else to speak? Yes, ma'am. You have 5 minutes. Clock will be located up on the screen. State your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Adrian Cos. I am Brenda Cashwell's granddaughter, and I currently live with her because I am in college. And so, what's been happening ever since I moved, I've been smelling these goats. And I'm a plus size girl and I need to exercise. And when I go outside, it stinks. And I have a keen nose. And it's just really unbearable. And yes, I did work in FFA when I was in high school. Yes, I know how bad it smells. And therefore, when I go outside, I usually don't smell nothing, but it's gotten so bad, I throw up. I say, Grandma, I cannot walk. I can't do anything. So now I can't even go outside. And what she's been doing, she's just been having the air freshers and having the humidifiers, and it's just been unbearable. And my grandma's almost 70 years old, and she's not supposed to be inhaling that. And that hurts me because she is literally my grandmother. I don't want her to be sick because she inhaling this. It just hurts me so bad that I cannot let my grandma go outside. And then she over here inhaling that. It's a health risk. And I'm sorry that I'm crying because my grandma means everything to me. And I bet every one of y'all have a grandma and y'all love her so much. And that's why I'm crying, because it's just unbearable. I don't want to see nothing happen to her. And that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak on this petition? Oh, okay, come on up. I didn't even see that. Yes, ma'am, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Candace Quispa, and 361 Hunley Springs Road. I'm a neighbor of Brenda's. And he said, he's been going around, and this is not true. The animals he's complaining about, they are considered culture. And they have enough acres to have the animals they have that he's been complaining about. And during the summer, when Brenda went away for a brief period, we fed her cats. And my husband and I, we were nearly sick smelling the goats. So, I do know when we were feeding the cats, the odor was unbearable. And I do know, and she would have been here tonight, the neighbors across the street from Brenda, but unfortunately, her brother-in-law has cancer, and they've been dealing with that. Otherwise, they would be here to complain too.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak? Okay, we can take action now, Kim, Ms. Adams. Okay. Okay, my fellow board members, you've heard the pros and cons of this petition. And what's the board's response to this as far as approving or disapproving? I guess, Okay. Ms. Adams just referred me to the staff recommendation. After receiving public comment, the Board of Supervisors may concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation by adopting the attached resolution for denial of the rezoning petition, or consideration may be granted by the board to adopt a resolution in support of Mr. Faulkner's request. Mr. Hogan.
So his parcel is R1,
but it's A1 directly behind it and all the other speakers tonight. Is that right? So if he were A1, it's okay to have the goats, even on 1.5 acres or less than a,
We do not have any regulation on number of animals or whatnot as far as livestock or anything like that. There are recommendations from Virginia Tech and other extension agencies. I think there's some information in the packet about, that we got from a couple of extension agencies, but there's not a regulation as to how many animals you can have per acre, whether it be a horse, cow, goat, or anything else.
so, but livestock is not allowed in R1 at all? Or could it be in a conditional use? Okay.
Additional comments? What's the board's pleasure? Well, I'll start it off by saying I agree with the planning commission. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the planning commission's recommendation not to approve the rezoning request. And I just think that if we change this one site, granted, you got 3 different sites, 3 different zones that come together at the corner of his property, which makes no sense. You got agricultural, R1, and commercial, all in one, adjoining one parcel. But that being said, we can't fix the other 2, but I don't think changing this one would help matters any. To me, it's going to make it more complicated, and it might be considered spot zoning. So therefore, I will make a motion to accept the planning commission's recommendation.
Motion made, is there a second? We'll have a roll call vote. Mr. Hips? For denial. Reverend Jones? Mr. Hinkle?
Aye.
Mr. Hope?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Okay, moving on. Next is public hearing zoning ordinance amendments. Now, we have 2 up here, actually, pretty much same subject. Anybody that's speaking on this, you can speak on either one. On number 4, as you can see on your screen, or number 5. Either one you can speak on. As duly advertised, public hearing has been scheduled to receive comments on proposed amendments to the county zoning ordinance. The proposed changes provide amendments to certain terms and provides for over 170 new terms in section 19.6-12 definitions, then district regulations in section 19.667 through 19.672.1, adding and deleting certain permitted and conditional uses in multiple zoning districts. And finally, in section 19.6-97.3 regarding the visual impacts, setbacks, and buffering for utility-scale solar energy farms. They planned the commission back in September and held a public hearing. Several citizens spoke in favor of the amendments related to solar energy. No comments were received concerning the definitions. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the amendments. Staff has prepared 2 ordinances to relative of these amendments. 1, section 19.6-12 definitions, and 2, all other amendments to include the changes of the permitted and conditional uses in multiple zoning districts, and section 19.6-97.3, visual impacts, setbacks, and buffering. Now, the staff recommendation on this is after receiving public comment, the Board of Supervisors may consider adoption of the 2 ordinances concerning the Planning Commission recommendation to approve the amendments of the zoning ordinance. And I'd like to ask, before we get any more, I'd like to ask Mr. Rourke if he would kind of explain this a little bit.
Okay. So, we'll start with the definitions, which has been a project of the planning commission for a while. They've kind of gone back and forth for a good time, and there's about 20 definitions that you see at the beginning there where they tweak the definitions, and there's about 170 definitions there that are new. The sole purpose of all of that is to provide clarity, and you know, we get questions all the time on a daily basis, and you know, if a term is not in the zoning ordinance as a definition, and we either have to figure out a definition or we have to go to a standard dictionary. So the more terms that we can have in our zoning ordinance, the more clarity we can provide. So that's kind of that whole section is just over time we create a list and we come forward with a block on at a time to try to help us as we administer the ordinance day to day. Then moving on to some of the other changes. So from time to time, the planning commission looks at various items within the ordinance, some of those being the land uses within the various districts, and sometimes they look at the regulations. So in this case, they looked at both of those. That you know, they create a work plan at the beginning of each year as to what they want to work on, and solar was one of the things in their work plan at the beginning of the year. So a lot of this has to do with solar, but they've also gone back and looked at the A1 district. So you have a group of about 15 or 16 uses within the A1 district that they want to delete. The idea behind that, A1 is our most wide open district, and A1 also encompasses the majority of the land mass in the county. A little over 90% of the county is owned A1. We have close to, I think it's 70 or 80 uses between the permitted and the conditional charts. So there's some of those that are more business aligned, and they wanted to kind of pare down that list. There's one of them, which is Garden Center, they thought would better be suited instead of a permanent use to be a conditional use. And within that, they were also looking at solar. Solar currently within our ordinance is a conditional use in A1, and they would like to eliminate that as a use within the A1 district. So that gets into some of the ordinance part. As also along the solar realm, there's a difference between utility scale solar, which are the big solar farms, and then there's residential solar, which is rooftop solar, or the small solar that is used at your house. Okay, that's allowed in a couple of districts right now. The small scale of residential solar, they would like to add that as a permitted use in each zoning district. So the zoning districts where it's currently not allowed would be the R3, the V1, the B1, and the V2. So they want to add small scale or residential solar to those, so you can have it at your house. The utility scale solar, which is the large solar farms, they want to eliminate from A1. That being said, it would only be allowed, the only place utility scale solar would be allowed would be the industrial, or M1 industrial zone, or planned industrial, which is the industrial park. Those are the only two zoning districts that it would be allowed in as a conditional use. Okay? Then you move forward to the regulations, which is the 19.6, 97.3, which deals with the visual impacts, setbacks, and the buffers. And they widened or broadened those setbacks and the buffers. So on number one, on the vegetative buffer, currently the regulation is for a 20-foot buffer. They want to increase that to a 100-foot buffer. Under number two, which deals with the setbacks, currently the setbacks are from the exterior lines of a project. So any utility scale project
that comes through. Just about every one of them is going to have multiple parcels, generally under multiple ownership. So the way the rule is now, let's say you have 1,000 acres and it's in 5 parcels, the setbacks are only from the outside boundaries. This change that we're talking about would make those setbacks relative to all parcel lines, so the interior and the exterior parcel lines would be impacted. That would greatly reduce the size of a utility scale solar farm. That would be the effect of that change. They also wanted to increase the distance from a creek, stream, wetland. Right now, that number is 50 feet. They want to increase that to 100 feet, so you have to be 100 feet off of a creek, stream, pond, or wetland. And they want to add language that says, or 50 feet from a 100-year floodplain boundary, whichever is greater. So keeping it from, that touches on your environmental impacts. I think that's it. What the effects of these changes to solar specifically is this will make solar very difficult to locate in the county. Ace, if you got that map. So I had Ace pull up a map here just so you can get an idea. This is most of the county. We just can't get the whole county on the screen. That's okay. The yellow beigey color is A1, so you can see how much of the county is A1. The blue, which is right here, or the light blue, are the planned industrial and the industrial zone. If you can do that zoom, thanks. So then most of our, as you can see, you've got the industrial park and you've got a few speckled industrial parcels. If you adopt these changes, those would be the only parcels where solar could come without a rezoning and without a conditional use. And you would have to do anywhere else would have to have a rezoning and a conditional use. On these light blue and blue would have to have a conditional use that stands today. I think that's
Okay.
it.
Mr. Chairman, question.
But Reverend Jones.
Thank you. So would that almost eliminate industrial?
It would almost eliminate the utility scale solar. There's roughly between the planned industrial and the industrial land area that is zoned that way, currently zoned that way, it is roughly 2% of the county land area. So effectively 98% of the county, you would have to take some zoning action to do utility scale solar in the county.
So it would still be possible?
It would be possible, but you would have to take, a developer would have to take that action. They would have to come before you, come before the planning commission, so you would have the public hearings for rezoning, you'd have public hearings for conditional use permit, if that would happen. Say somebody wanted to locate out in Oakville, on a large tract out in Oakville, they would have to come in and they would have to get that rezoning and that conditional use permit.
Okay. All right. We have first to speak on this is Mr. Faber Jamerson. You mind stating your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Faber Jamerson, 238 Golfers Circle in Appomattox, and also 2140 Country Club Road in Appomattox. As stated, I'm Faber Jamerson. I'm the general manager at Fallen River Country Club here in Appomattox. I'm here tonight representing Fallen River's approximately 600 stockholders and also many concerned members and citizens that live around Fallen River Country Club. I'm also here as a concerned father of 5 with long-reaching impacts that we don't know exactly what will happen in their futures, and obviously there are more things to be worried about, but there's some things that we can control and some things we can't. Fallen River was founded in 1965 and has been a staple of the local community ever since. We've helped numerous organizations during this time, and especially over the last 15 years, we've really expanded our outreach. Just last year, we helped Appomattox football coach Doug Smith with a massive fundraiser. And since then, we have founded the Smith Strong Foundation to allow us a larger footprint for outreach in the local communities. That's why I'm here tonight, which is to try to help the community in another way, which is we are urging you to please approve the Appomattox County Planning Commission's recommendations regarding renewable energy. Solar farms impacts, again, they reach far beyond landowners' borders and also the solar installation itself. Fallen River is deeply concerned with the potential drop in property values associated with industrial-scale solar farms. There have been many studies done on property value decline regarding solar farms, and initial studies show only minimal impacts on any property values, if they show any at all. However, studies that have been done that are looking at data that is longer than 10 years show that property values are indeed declining. Some of the largest impacts are felt by property owners within 3 miles of industrial-scale solar farms, with property values dropping anywhere between 5 and 30%. In a study commissioned by the University of Rhode Island, shows that property values did indeed drop by 5% within 3 miles of solar facilities, looking at data from 2005 to 2019. Probably the most damning study was requested by 20th District Kentucky State Senator Paul Hornback and completed by Mary Clay, a real estate appraiser in Paris, Kentucky in 2021. This study shows that property values have decreased in that area by 5 to 30% over the 10-year period prior. So these studies more than debunk the argument that solar farms have no impact on property values. Also here, prior to the Planning Commission's work on doing this, we spearheaded a petition that has over 200 signatures, and this states that we, the undersigned stockholders, directors, and members of Fallen River Country Club and concerned citizens, urge the Appomattox County Board of Supervisors and the Appomattox County Planning Commission to reject all current and future proposals to construct solar farms within 10 miles of Fallen River Country Club property. Again, we were concerned at the time extremely with property value decline and also the potential environmental damages to this area. So again, we please urge you to approve their recommendations regarding large-scale solar. And thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Next, have Mr. Travis O'Brien. Name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Travis O'Brien, 4079 Pumping Station Road. Mr. Chairman and Board, I appreciate the time to come talk to you tonight. I want to talk about the impact of environmental, of commercial solar. These things are constructed of lead, cadmium. Both are recognized as carcinogens. We don't know what these things do. There's no studies to really say where we are 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. These things break apart. They go in the ground. We don't know where they go except groundwater. We don't need Appomattox County to be the next commercial on TV talking about Camp Lejeune or anything else. This is a pretty county the way it is. We need to accept these recommendations and move forward and not have any commercial solar in here. Other than that, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Mrs. Terry Jamerson. Name and address for the record, please.
Thank you for your time. My name is Terry Jamerson, 2594 Country Club Road. I am personally 100% in favor of a landowner's rights to their property. However, the consequences of a large-scale solar installation far exceed an individual landowner's boundaries. I'm also in favor of clean energy, but large-scale solar installations are far from the panacea we, the public, are led to believe. In fact, solar farms are anything but green energy. There's quite a bit of misinformation regarding solar farms. I am no expert, but there are large-scale solar farms all over, and there are many reasons to keep them out of Appomattox County. And here I will just list a few. Well, someone's making a lot of money. The landowner, the developer, and the power company. If there's so much money out there, then I'd like to know why these are so heavily subsidized by the government, by us, the taxpayers. And why, as they are developed, are they all under a shell corporation, an LLC? And when you look into the LLCs, most all of them are owned by foreign companies. Michael Schellenberger, who's the author of Apocalypse Never, noted that the Chinese government, who make most of the solar panels, also subsidize the solar industry. The panels are made from dirty coal and forced labor to produce them. And they have no plan of what they do with their hazardous waste at the end of life of their solar panels, or what they don't use to produce the solar panels. Princeton University also reported it takes an average of 300 times more land to produce the same amount of energy as natural gas or nuclear in the dynamic of energy, producing energy. And within the next 15 years, this country is going to have extreme problems with disposal of solar panels that are going to reach their end of life. The solar panels, as Travis mentioned, contain silver, lead, arsenic, cadmium, and cadmium is highly toxic. It is known as a carcinogen, and exposure to cadmium is a cancerous causing agent that attacks your nervous system. I applaud this organization, the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, for thinking ahead, for being thoughtful, for trying to protect the citizens of Appomattox and Appomattox County, because our land is our greatest asset. And your thoughtfulness is most appreciated for the citizens today and our citizens for tomorrow. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Winford Nash. Name and address for the record, please.
Let me, I got 3 handouts here that if y'all could share them, I would appreciate it. My name is Winfred Nash, and I live at 2546 Central Church Road here in Appomattox. And also, I'd like to note that I'm a retired president of BWXT Nuclear Operations Group. So solar energy is something that our company has been looking at for quite a while, and so I don't feel like I'm an authority on solar energy, but at the same time, I think I have a pretty good working knowledge of solar energy and the associated liabilities. And that's what I wanted to share with you tonight, is that the hand that I'm handing you is gives you a little bit of background on the makeup of a solar panel. And it's a laminated process. It's all held together with EVA glue. Also, with the little wafers there for the solar, they have to have a wire attached to each one of those wafers in order to be able to process that information, process that current down to the controller. And also, with it being designed for 20 to 25 years, who's to say that the thermal expansion that takes place with a solar panel, as far as expanding and contraction, is going to hold up with using a special type of glue that they've come up with. Now, when a solar panel is expended or exceeded its life of 20 to 25 years, it's considered a toxic and a hazardous waste. And if you've never dealt with having to process hazardous waste, I can tell you that's a significant challenge, because There's a lot of precautions you have to do and a lot of processing you have to do and a lot of characterization you have to do. So it's a very expensive process. Now, solar panels do not control, but they do have lead, they have silver, they have arsenic, and they have cadmium, which are considered heavy metals. And what they are finding, and as a result of this, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of a fire that they had in California just recently, where they had a 60-acre solar farm that caught a fire. And when the firefighters went there to try to put the fire out, they were turned away because the solar farm was still active in terms of generating DC current, and they have to convert that to AC current to tie it into the system. So it ended up destroying about 1,200 acres of land there. Now, one of the things that we don't know yet, and I haven't been able to find it out, is it's one thing to have a fire, and I got some pictures that shows how intensive a fire is with a solar farm, is that these heavy metals are going to become airborne, and it's going to affect the community, and who knows where these heavy metals may end up. And like Terry said, these heavy metals, especially some of them, if you take too many into your body, they're going to be detrimental to your health long term. Also, what they are finding, and this is just data that came out in the last last 12, 13 months, is that the intensity of having solar fires is increasing. And what they're finding is the workmanship that went into designing and building these panels was not of the quality that they thought it was going to be. But also they are finding out that the panels themselves, because of the lamination process and the fact that they are exposed to the elements in terms of heat and cooling and the cycling that they do from a structural standpoint, that the solar panels are not holding up as long as they thought they were. And as a result of that, they were beginning to have a number of fires that are generated from the solar panel. And also with the heavy rains, if that solar panel seal breaks, then you got these heavy metals then are going to leak into the ground, which means that ground at some point in time will be restricted as what it can be used for. So my point is that right now the solar energy is still in an infant stage. We do not understand what the liability is going to be. And that's why all these solar companies are using a LLC as a way of organizing the company, because they have no assets for liability. They do take the security bonds, but how are you going to identify what the security bond is going to be when you have a 6-acre solar farm that involves 1,200 acres? How do you put a price on that? So what I'm saying is that I think the only way they'll be able to deal with that in California is they're going to have to make that excuse me one second. They're going to have a super fund. So anyway, I just want to be sure that you understand that there's an unknown liability here that is going to be very, very difficult to quantify. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Anyone else here to address? Yes, sir. Come on up. Please state your name and address for the record.
Be happy to. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and county staff. My name is Skylar Zunk. I'm here on behalf of a nonprofit that my colleague and I founded not too long ago called Energy Right. We're here. Energy Right exists to bring a conservative perspective to clean energy conversations across the state. In your plan, you mentioned the governor's energy plan. We contributed to that with some comments to the governor, very involved in Richmond on some of these matters. We want to see clean energy projects when they come to rural Virginia be good neighbors. We also want to bring the conservative ideal of property rights into this conversation. Your right to use your land how you see fit, as long as you're not adversely affecting your neighbors. I want to be really specific with a couple of elements of the plan, both the ordinance adjustment and the comprehensive plan. Really respect what you all are doing in terms of setbacks and buffers. We think that's a good thing to be putting on solar projects, to make them good neighbors, to shield them from view and make them more hospitable neighbors to the community that they surround. One question I had about, one question from the ordinance was the interior lines. Was really confused by some of the language there. I heard earlier that it's meant to make projects smaller. I think it will actually make projects bigger if you instill bigger setbacks in the interior of a project that really no one can see unless you're there. Property lines, they're there for a reason. They're a little bit arbitrary, and I think you can design better projects with a little bit more flexibility, shield them from view better, avoid wetlands, et cetera, et cetera. I actually think that might be an unintended consequence, making these bigger. I don't think it really helps the landowners or the neighbors. And with the comprehensive plan language, 500-acre cap and leaving A1 out of the comprehensive plan for solar options, I think that's hurting the property rights of a lot of your landowners who might want the opportunity to explore some options with putting a portion of their land into a solar energy facility. I want to end by talking about why this is so important. As a hardcore conservative, I want all of these decisions to be made right here in this room. And we think that local input, local education is very, very important. Not everybody in this state agrees with us. There are proposals year after year to strip counties of their power to site these projects, giving an unelected group of bureaucrats in Richmond the power to site these. We always urge for responsible tact in adjusting an ordinance and a comprehensive plan. We think that shutting the door on solar is only going to encourage those voices in Richmond to move forward with those proposals, take this power away from the counties, because we have to produce electricity somewhere. Producing it on our side of the grid with new technology, increasing our energy security and our energy independence right here in Virginia and America is very important. So just offer that bit of advice, take it or leave it. Again, big concern about the interior property lines. I'd be happy to work with you all. We have a lot of resources on our website, Virginia Tech studies that have looked into the safety of these panels and safety of these projects in the worst weather conditions possible. Fires, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes. They're safe, they're proven. That's why in this comprehensive plan and ordinance, we're allowing people to put them on their homes when they're quietly producing electricity in a field shielded from view. They do not have adverse impacts on neighbors. And I'm saying that as a neighbor, adjacent property owner to a utility scale project myself. So thank you for your time. Again, my name's Skylar Zunk. Our nonprofit's called Energy Right, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak?
Should we get a rebuttal?
No. Okay, gentlemen. You've heard the pros and the cons on this subject. Mr. Hinkle.
Mr. Chairman, I agree wholeheartedly with all the speakers against us said, especially about the environmental impacts that we don't know about, especially when it comes to panel disposal. But also, none of them talked about the front end, the environmental impact of all that mining and everything that goes in, which is really more environmentally harmful than anything else. But I do have another question about the residential solar panels. I know of two people who have put up residential solar, and they're like, their array is almost as big as that, half as big as that wall there. And if I was a neighbor to them and it was close to me, I wouldn't want that. So I just wondering what kind of setback and whatnot have you put in the planning for that? Because if it's on the roof, but if it's they're beside their house and I'm living next door to them and I got this glare from this big solar array that's 40 feet long and 8 foot high, I'm going to have some. Right now, that structure, if it was a standalone structure, which a lot of them are, they would meet the accessory structure setback for whatever district they're in. So theoretically, it could be 15 feet from the property line, say a side property line, or 35 feet from the back or whatever. So those could go down. They're essentially treated like if they're a standalone structure, they're essentially treated like a shed by the current zoning ordinance.
So in other words, there's no distraction of it. of the light, the reflection?
We haven't heard anything from people with residential ones. We haven't heard any complaints from people that get the residential. Not many, the ones that we've seen in our office have been more in rural settings, so they're not close to the property lines. We've done a few, I know we've done one in the town of Pamplin, maybe two. We've done a couple kind of semi-close to town, but most of them are out in more rural areas. That's where we've seen them so far.
Yeah, well, I know the one that I know of is out in Miss Adams' neighborhood in Charlotte County, but it's well hidden from the road and everything else. But then there's another one that is right there on Evergreen Road. If it wasn't set so far back, it would almost be an eyesore, but.
Any more discussion? Concerns?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hogan?
so, and I saw the same thing that the last speaker was alluding to, on the impact, on the setbacks, number 2. It says that solar panels and batteries shall be set back a minimum of 100 feet as measured from all property lines internal and external to the project. Property lines internal to the project do not require a setback. Although those two sentences contradict each other. So I don't know if one of them is supposed to be a strike-through.
That second one is supposed to be
Because
a
that's,
strike-through.
okay.
Property lines is, the project setback is supposed to be a strike-through.
In which of these documents did I read about the setbacks from creeks and streams? Is that in this one, or is that in the overall general?
It's number, should be number, later, number 2.
Okay. I do have a concern about the internal property lines. That's just gonna make you have a whole bunch of little ones. If you,
There was some discussion about if you shrink those, if they apply to all internal and external, you may actually add parcels to a project because generally speaking.
Can you hold on a second? Could you go to the mic? Thank you.
Generally speaking, in the industry, it's relatively 8 acres or so per megawatt. So if a company comes in, they want to do a 60 megawatt project, it's really just a math equation on how they get there. So that's how many acres they've got to have to get there. So, that's been part of the discussion, but there was, quite a bit of discussion with the Planning Commission about that. And they came down on the side of, they just thought those setbacks should apply to all parcels. One of their thoughts was that, all of us own parcels and we go in 20 years, 10 years down the road or whatever, some of those landowners change and some of those landowners don't want to be involved in that project and they fall off, how would those setbacks apply at that point? So if they apply in the beginning to all of the property lines, then you don't have to make any adjustments or whatever to the solar farm in the future. That's kind of one of the thoughts. Any other questions of me?
Hang on.
All right.
Any other concerns or any questions?
well, I do have one other question, Mr. Chairman. So the renewable energy policy amendment,
Yes, in the comp plan. Yes, sir.
that's more of a guiding
That statement
philosophy?
is a guiding statement in your comp plan. As you know, your comp plan is a guiding document. How that statement plays into solar is if you have a solar project come in, then you are supposed to look at that project and review it against your comprehensive plan for what's called substantial, for it to be in substantial accord with your comp plan. It's called a 2232 review.
The only way around that is to do siting agreements. That is allowable, but we don't do or haven't done siting agreements at this point. So if a project comes in, the planning commission would do that 2232 to see if it meets, is in accordance with your comprehensive plan. Basically, you're citing these where you say you want to cite them. That statement is basically saying we want to cite them in these areas under these conditions. And if it fails as 2232, that's kind of the first step. If a project fails the 2232 review, then it doesn't move forward to the rezoning part of it or the conditional use part of it. So that would be your first step in the process.
They could entertain a siting agreement and bypass all
They,
of it.
they could entertain a siting agreement, but at this point, we have not entertained a siting agreement at all.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Rourke. Okay, gentlemen. We've heard discussions from our constituents, from the public, and is there a motion to approve the planning commission's recommendation?
We're gonna do all three of these at one time or do them separate?
Can we do all three of them?
Well, I think Mr. Rourke split them out as suggested two separate ordinances.
There's two ordinances and there's a resolution for the comp plan.
Right.
All right.
It's three documents. Right, it's three documents.
So we can do number 4 and number 5? Okay, so the 2 would be 4 and 5.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hibbs.
Regardless of the order of these things here, I would move that we accept the resolution as written for the renewable energy policy. And then what do we,
Go back to number 4, the staff recommendation.
well, that's for the zoning amendments altogether.
We haven't had that public hearing yet for renewable energy.
So this would just be for what we just,
For the renewable energy, since we addressed that first, I would move that we accept that resolution.
that's just further discussion?
I think we're doing it back.
Do I need-
We haven't had that public hearing yet. Go back to number 4.
That's the one we
What's
just
before you
said.
now is the zoning amendments to take solar out of the agricultural districts, not allow it anymore.
Okay,
I thought that's what you said.
all right.
Yeah, I know.
There's two ordinances. There's one ordinance that deals strictly with the definitions, and then it's another ordinance that deals with everything else.
Okay. So,
Okay.
Mr. Hibbs, your
So
motion.
in number 4, we're talking about the garden center and all of that together. Okay,
In the second ordinance, there's one ordinance that deals with just the definitions,
okay.
and then there's a second ordinance that deals with everything else, which includes the garden center.
I just want one of them to get on that.
Okay, what I was trying to do was make this simple on myself, but I don't know that I succeeded. So I wanted to, the reason I'm wanting to address the solar one first, and was because I think that one is a clear-cut thing to move forward, considering the constituents and whatnot. But I wanted to personally bring up something about one of the changes in zoning definition, and so I don't want to.
Oh, that's number 5. Number 4. Okay. So part of the discussion then.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're all together, that's what I'm saying.
I think you can pull, I think what Mr. Hibbs, correct me if I'm wrong, what you're getting to is you would like, in the second ordinance that deals with the changes to the zoning districts and the uses and the solar, so all that's cobbled together in one. I think you would like to strike the line, let's see here, there's a line that deletes
Garden center, right.
and hands it back as a conditional use. I think he would like to strike
Yeah, no,
those two items from that ordinance.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, because I thought we could deal with them separately, but I see the way they're written. But my biggest concern, and I appreciate the hard work of the Planning Commission, of looking through every single one of the things that was written in there, and then the solar adjustments. I think there's been a lot of good work done here, and I think it's impressive, and I praise you for your diligence in that work. I only have one term, and that's exactly what Mr. Rourke said, which is the garden center. I don't agree that garden center should be taken out of the allowable use for A1 agricultural and put into conditional use. I think that a garden center is, well, first and foremost, a garden center is agricultural. That's a type of agricultural endeavor. And I think that we don't have a good definition for garden center. And because of that, Mr. Rourke's predecessor could determine that a garden center is any number of agricultural endeavors. And I could have 2 greenhouses and sell tomato plants, and that could be considered a garden center. Potentially. And that doesn't make any sense to me. If it's an agricultural endeavor on A1 property, I don't think that we should be taking out something like that. So that's the only one that didn't make sense. And I kind of boil it down to, would I be okay with a garden center in 90% of the county? Because 90% of the county is A1, and I would. So my motion would be to, go ahead.
I was gonna say, can you make it as an amendment?
Yeah, my motion would be to accept the changes, but put garden center back in A1 as regular use or accepted use? Permitted use.
You would just leave, if I may.
Please.
I think in your ordinance, it's the 6th whereas there, you would just strike the words garden center, and in the 8th whereas, you would strike that entire line. And then it's currently a permitted use, so that would take it out, it would remain as a permitted use by doing those 2 things to the proposed ordinance.
So we need to bring it back, do it not? If we do an amendment. Okay, that's part of your motion.
Are we good enough to move?
Yes. Amen. Is there a second to it?
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we have a roll call vote. Mr. Hibbs.
Aye.
Reverend Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hogan.
Which one are we voting on?
Oh, Lord.
Who's on first?
Are we doing the definition ones, or are we doing the,
The second one.
In number 4.
the second ordinance in number 4? As much as I want to say yes, because I just think, Lord, utility scale solar is a bad idea in this county. But I do think if somebody has 505 acres and they want to put it on a solar farm, and they live in Oakville or Pamplin or wherever, they ought to have that option with a conditional use. So I'm going to vote no.
And I vote yes, so. That's in support of the planning commission recommendation. Okay, now, moving on. Public hearing. Definitions.
He didn't change.
And that's number
There's
5.
no change to it.
That's deal in 4. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hibbs.
a less confusing motion.
Yes, sir.
To approve the definitions as recommended by the Planning Commission.
All right. Motion
Second.
duly made and second. Discussion. Roll call vote, Mr. Hibbs.
Aye.
Reverend Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hogan.
Aye.
I also vote aye. My, we can move on to number 5. We learned something from this, I hope. and that is we can't combine anymore like this. Public hearing amendment to comprehensive plan approach to renewable energy. A duly advertised public hearing has been scheduled for the Board of Supervisors to receive comments on proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan regarding the approach to renewable energy policy statement found in the growth management section of the plan. The proposed statement found in the growth management section of the plan. The proposed changes provide more detailed guidance on the potential setting of the utility-scale solar energy projects and wind energy projects in the county. The changes would limit the recommended areas to industrial areas of the county. The planning factors to consider when setting such facilities would be recommended limiting these facilities in size, proximity to the prime farmland or farmlands of statewide importance. The Planning Commission held a public hearing in September and received several comments in support of these changes. Excuse me. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend these changes. Now, the staff recommendation, after receiving public comments, the Board of Supervisors may consider the resolution prepared by staff with the recommendation of the Planning Commission to amend and readopt the Appomattox County Comprehensive Plan with the changes to the approach to renewable energy policy statement. Anyone in here to speak on it? Hearing none, close this public hearing. To that regard, and is there a motion to adopt the amendment to comprehensive plan approach to renewable energy?
Mr.
Chairman, I'll
Chairman.
make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote, Mr. Hips. Reverend Jones. Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hogan. I also vote aye. Okay, next, gentlemen, is action items. First is school supplemental appropriation request we have before us. Is there any questions on this? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the supplemental appropriation request in the amount of $233,331,038? Excuse me, $233,331.38. Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we make that supplemental appropriation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Hips. Reverend Jones. Mr. Hinkle.
Aye.
Mr. Hogan.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next, gentlemen, is the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes approval of all bills, minutes, supplemental appropriations, line item transfers, and fund transfers. Any item on the consent agenda shall be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member prior to the vote on the consent agenda. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be considered by the board individually in order in which they were removed from the consent agenda immediately following consideration of the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions, concerns in regards to the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion duly made. Is that second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Hips? Reverend Jones? Mr. Hinkle?
Aye.
Mr. Hogan?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Mr. Latchney?
No report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mrs. Adams?
Yes, sir. Before you, you've got a copy of the county administrator's report with all the department data and information of what's been going on during the month of September. There are several items I would like to point out. First of all, you have an invitation from Ann Dixon to two upcoming events that's going to take place in Appomattox for the Christmas holidays. And also, I'd like for you to notate that's not in the report is a report from the treasurer. And it's the delinquent taxes. And if you don't have it, please let staff know. Also, a special thank you to the board for their support for the Railroad Festival. I think it was a tremendous success this year, and with people like you that support it, that makes it even more of a success. There are several things notated in red on the report that I would like for you to notice. There's the invitation that I just showed you. Also, under the Votex Center, please note that Mr. Boone will be inviting you to participate in a tour and open house of the renovations that have occurred so far. And he will be serving refreshments, and we will be sending out additional information on that topic. Also, I've enclosed, you should have with your report a letter from Ms. McCoy. She's the president of the Carver Price Legacy Museum, and she was requesting a meeting with the county attorney and myself, and we did meet. And we have additional meetings scheduled in reference to that, and then we'll be making a report back to the board. Also, you have a schedule, and it's school construction, and in November, that project should be completed. And in addition to that, Dr. Bennett has asked for the committee to meet and talk about some funds that were left over that we can, she's got some ideas that she would like to pursue in completing that renovation. And you also have, don't forget, each one of you should have received the school tour invite. And if you have not RSVP to that, please do so by October the 20th. And I've also included a flyer from the American Civil War Museum event scheduled for Saturday, October the 29th, and that's the Fall Festival flyer. And everything else I will not read to you, but if you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hinkle.
I agree that the Railroad Festival was a tremendous this year, and it's like outdid previous years, but I did have several residents state to me that the way that the band played the national anthem on Friday night was very out of character for the national anthem, and they felt it was disrespectful in the style that they played it.
Mr. Hinkle, I heard the same remark, and I said something to, who was it? Can't remember. But the reply that I received on that was, you got to change something to attract the young people. And I said, I just cannot believe it. But I would say, I didn't like it was played either. I'll tell the world that. But other than that, it's wonderful.
Well, I would like to comment. I wasn't
Yes, ma'am.
responsible for that,
Yes,
but I
ma'am.
will
Yes.
communicate it.
Okay, any other issues or concerns we can ask our county administrator? Okay, next we have reports and informational items you have before you. Any questions on those items? Supervisor concerns, Mr. Hips. Reverend Jones.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hinkle.
Yes, I do. I've had several calls this last 2 or 3 weeks from residents in my district and also from subdivision residents in either Mr. Hips or Mr. Jones's district regarding dogs running at large. And we all know that we're a hunting county, and I've got no problem, and these residents have no problems with hunting dogs. But the problem they have is in these condensed residential areas, there seems to be an increase in dogs like German Shepherds, Pit Bulls, Dobermans, dogs that make these people feel really uncomfortable when they're walking their small little poodle through the neighborhood, and they feel intimidated. And I thought there was going to be some people here tonight to speak out because I told them, well, you need to come to the board and speak at the public comment period. But I would like to see the board look at a ordinance similar to what Bedford County has about dogs running at large. And the way the Bedford County one is set is that it's basically available as an ordinance for the county, but it only affects those residential areas, like if, now I'm going, Walden Place, is it?
Yeah.
One of the subdivisions? If the residents of Walden Place would come in and say, hey, we would like to be added to that ordinance, so that ordinance is enforced in our area, then each individual subdivision would have to do that. So it wouldn't be like an ordinance affecting all R1. It would just be if that subdivision, those residents wanted the ordinance for their subdivision, then they could request it. Because it is, and I think, Mr. Carter, you've had complaints from some of your people. So I think it's something that we should look at. And then again, this is not an effort to throttle the hunting dogs. This is an effort to make those condensed residential communities feel safe from what they see as aggressive dogs, or dogs that the neighbors just let run wild because they don't want to take care, they don't want to feel responsible for them.
Would you like the county administrator to look in on this?
Yeah, and I'd like to see it, on next month's agenda to talk about it.
Okay.
And I have a copy of the Bedford ordinance too.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Mr. Hogan?
Nothing tonight.
And I don't have anything. I will echo what Mrs. Adams said to a certain extent. And that is because she was echoing about the Railroad Festival, the committee and all, then I thank her and her committee. For this year's Railroad Festival, it was, I don't have words to describe it. It was absolutely wonderful. It was great. And anybody that didn't like it, I don't know what's wrong with them. I really don't. So, and also what I like about it is, if you don't like it, you ain't gotta come. Then stay at home. So, upon saying that, our next meeting is November the 21st at 6:30. Mr. Hinkle.
I move we rise.
All right.